Justice Mohammed Garba Umar of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja on Friday apparently rejected the plans by the Inspector General of Police, IGP Kayode Egbetokun, to stop the upcoming Monday, October 20th planned mass protests by Nigerians to demand the release of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, but, according to the organizer of the protest, Omoyele Sowore, after the judge initially declined to grant the Nigeria police force an ex-parte motion to stop the planned protest in the open court, the Federal High Court judge, Justice Umar, reportedly granted the motion in chambers, imposing a ban on protests at Aso Rock Villa, National Assembly, or Unity Fountain in Abuja. We await a certified true copy of the order, which our lawyers will review. The protest remains unstoppable. While this is ongoing, the United States, U.S. Embassy in Nigeria has warned American citizens to be far from the protest areas and limit their movements in the Nigeria capital city, Abuja, saying, the planned protest may lead to disruptions and violence. Detailed of the court action as captured by Punch newspaper. The Federal High Court in Abuja has refused the Nigeria police force's bid to stop the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest, allowing it to proceed as scheduled on Monday, October 20, 2025. The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, had dispatched police lawyers to the court to move an ex-parte motion against activist and protest organizer, Omoyele Sowore, in a bid to legally preempt the planned demonstration slated for the Aso Rock Villa. However, Justice Umar of the Federal High Court, Abuja, declined to grant the motion, which would have immediately restrained the protest from taking place without hearing the opposing side. The judge instead instructed the police to formally serve notice of their application on Sowore and adjourned the case until Tuesday for a proper, contested hearing. Reacting to the judicial decision, the protest convener, Omoyele Sowore, affirmed the court's decision as a victory for civil liberties and doubled down on the scheduled protest. In a statement issued on his X handle on Friday following the ruling, Sowore said, IG of Police, Nigeria, Kayode Egbetokun dispatched police lawyers to sue me, in an effort to halt the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest scheduled for Aso Rock Villa on Monday. However, the judge, Justice Umar of Federal High Court in Abuja, refused to grant the ex-parte motion, instead instructing him to serve me notice and adjourning the case until Tuesday for a proper hearing. The demonstration, organized under the hashtag Free Nnamdi Kanu, is intended to draw attention to the prolonged detention and legal fate of Kanu. The police action was seen as an attempt to leverage the courts to prevent a potentially sensitive gathering near the seat of Nigerian power. The adjournment to Tuesday ensures that the planned Monday protest is not currently constrained by a court order, setting the stage for a potential high-profile confrontation between protesters and security agencies around the presidential villa. Channels Television also on Friday reported that, ahead of the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest slated for Monday, October 20th in the nation's capital, the U.S. Embassy in Abuja has issued a security alert to Americans. In a statement published on its website on Friday, the embassy cautioned that the protest could lead to disruptions and potential violence. The embassy advised U.S. citizens to steer clear of the protest areas and limit their movement across the city. The U.S. Embassy in Abuja informs U.S. citizens that the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest has called for peaceful demonstrations on Monday, October 20, 2025, in Abuja. There may be roadblocks, traffic, congestion, and confrontations between police and protesters that could turn violent around Eagle Square and the Central Business District. The embassy advises all U.S. citizens to avoid this area and to severely limit all movement throughout the city on Monday, October 20th, the statement read in part. The embassy recommended that children stay home from school and that domestic staff who commute from outside Abuja do not report to work on that day. It also called on all Americans in Nigeria to take heightened security precautions. The planned protest was announced by activist and former presidential candidate of the African Action Congress, Omoyele Sowore, on his X account on October 9th. Sowore stated that the protest would take place on October 20th and be directed toward the Aso Rock presidential villa. He described it as a historic and peaceful demonstration aimed at securing the release of the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu. Kanu, who is currently facing terrorism charges at the Federal High Court in Abuja, has been in custody since June 2021 following his controversial extradition from Kenya. But shortly after the aforesaid media reports, Omoyele Sowore, in a statement through his social media accounts on Friday, said that, after failing to obtain a legitimate court order to halt the unstoppable Free Nnamdi Kanu protest, the Nigeria police force has now resorted to a fresh wave of panic-driven measures. In Ondo State, police authorities have reportedly ordered that officers sympathetic to the movement be confined to their barracks, an action that exposes the deep unease within the system. Rather than engage with the legitimate and peaceful demands of citizens, the police are turning their energy toward internal repression and fear tactics, a clear sign that the movement's message has struck a nerve. The people are awake, and the movement remains unstoppable. In another statement on Friday accompanied with video footage, Omoyele Sowore said, earlier today, the Nigeria Police Force, FCT Command invited Barrister Maxwell Opara to discuss the planned Free Nnamdi Kanu protest. Upon our arrival at the command's entrance, we were abruptly stopped by a police contingent stationed at the gate. Officers claimed the new commissioner of police was resuming duty and could not attend to visitors until after his official resumption rituals. When we were eventually allowed through, the senior police officer, Habib Mohammed, who had extended the invitation, met us and presented a copy of the organizer's letter seeking police protection. Barrister Maxwell Opara had not arrived at that point, a letter filed by Barrister Opara as legal representative of the protest movement. But the tone of the meeting shifted quickly after the senior police officer Mohammed received a phone call. He informed us that the Deputy Commissioner of Police, DCP, in charge of the State Intelligence Department, SID, wished to meet us. When we arrived at his office, he expressed surprise at my presence at the FCT command, claiming that no invitation had been extended to me personally. He remained polite, and we left courteously. Shortly after, Barrister Maxwell Opara arrived to the Supol's office, where the conversation turned tense. The officer issued a veiled threat, warning that Barrister Opara would be held responsible if anything goes wrong anywhere in Abuja on Monday. Barrister Opara reminded him that this was precisely why the organizers had sent a formal notification to ensure a peaceful and lawful demonstration. The officer reportedly began shouting, and the meeting ended abruptly. According to Barrister Opara, it became clear that they did not want me present because they were seeking someone they could intimidate. Not long after we left the command, the illegal IGP directed police lawyers to obtain a court order to stop the protest. However, the Federal High Court judge declined to grant the order in open court. It was later reported that a limited purpose order was issued, but no such order has been served on the organizers. The Free Nnamdi Kanu protest is unstoppable. We are proceeding as planned, peacefully, lawfully, and with unwavering resolve, Omoyele Sowore stated.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Whenever controversies surround Rufai Aseni, the outspoken and fearless broadcaster on Arise Television, one recurring argument often resurfaces in public discourse: the claim that Rufai Aseni is not a journalist. Critics are quick to emphasize that he lacks a formal academic background in journalism, having originally trained in animal anatomy. But beyond the semantics of qualification, a deeper question emerges. What truly defines a journalist, and what are the core functions of journalism in society? As mass communication teacher, we teach students from the very first class that the media exists to inform, educate, entertain, and preserve cultural heritage. Journalists also play the crucial roles of agenda setting and acting as watchdogs, holding public officials accountable and amplifying the voices of the governed. The media's capacity to shape national conversations is immense. By highlighting specific issues and giving them prominence, journalists help raise awareness and influence public perception. It is through such agenda-setting functions that societies engage in dialogue, debate, and reform. thereby playing participatory role in the process of governance. When examined through this functional lens, it becomes clear that Rufai Sani has consistently fulfilled these journalistic responsibilities over the years. His incisive questioning, fearless commentary, and commitment to public accountability have made him one of the most recognizable broadcast personalities in contemporary Nigerian media. A notable example is his now famous exchange with the Minister of Works, Engineer Dave Umahi, on Arise Television. Before that encounter, few Nigerians had publicly interrogated the cost per kilometer of road construction projects executed by government agencies. While the minister initially dismissed Rufai's question as elementary, the issue soon gained traction nationally. In fact, subsequent clarifications by Umahi, and even a public response by Oyo State Governor, Seyi Makinde, demonstrated that Asani's line of questioning had forced an important accountability conversation into the mainstream. Through this singular act, Rufai did what the media are mandated to do: hold power accountable, enlighten the public, and stimulate civic engagement. It is true that a formal qualification, such as a diploma or degree in journalism, is generally considered a prerequisite for professional practice. Yet, history tells a different story about the Nigerian press. Many of the country's most celebrated media pioneers, from Herbert Macaulay to Ernest Akoli, Nnamdi Azikiwe, and Obafemi Awolowo, were not trained journalists in the academic sense. Nevertheless, through passion, intellect, and experience, they became towering figures in the nation's journalistic landscape. In the decades that followed, major Nigerian newspapers like The Guardian, The Punch, The Tribune, and the defunct National Concord were edited by professionals whose backgrounds spanned literature, political science, law, and the humanities, not necessarily journalism. What mattered was their adherence to journalistic ethics and commitment to truth. Today, journalism is evolving faster than ever. The rise of social and digital media has democratized information dissemination, giving birth to citizen journalism, a space where individuals, regardless of academic background, can contribute meaningfully to public discourse. The boundaries of professional journalism have expanded, now encompassing voices trained in diverse disciplines but committed to the principles of truth, balance, and fairness. In this context, Rufai Sani's 2 decades of consistent broadcast experience, his engagement with media ethics, and his pursuit of professional development courses, all reinforce his credibility. His work reflects a mastery of journalism's essence, even if his educational roots lie elsewhere. The debate over Rufai Sani's academic background may continue, but it misses the more profound point. Journalism is as much a calling as it is a profession. It demands curiosity, courage, critical thinking, and an unwavering commitment to public interest. By these measures, Rufai Sani has proven himself a journalist, not by certificate, but by conviction and consistent service to society. Writer, Isa Abdulaziz, Mass Communication Lecturer, Federal Polytechnic, Auchi.
Minister, I would like to interject. This monologue is quite long. So, at first, Minister, after you had gone to report me in front of President Tinubu and said all sorts, anyway, I am not beholden to you. My job is accountability.
You are too small for me to report you to the President.
No, but they are empirical.
Too small.
Minister, let me speak. Minister, let me speak. I have empirical evidence. The world watched it on the commissioner of the project when you mentioned the questions I asked you to the president. That was reporting me to the president officially. The world watches, so you don't need to dilly-dally about the empirical facts. I don't talk without facts, Minister. You know, when I have my facts, I talk. And I insist on my question when I ask on cost.
Let me only address you.
Minister, you will not allow me speak. The problem is you will not allow me speak. You spoke for over 20 minutes, over 10 minutes.
Because you don't know what you are speaking.
But let me speak. Let me speak. You will not. You will not allow me speak. You see, if you can just keep quiet and be calm and just allow me speak, I'll be happy. All right. So my question still persists as regards the cost per kilometer. You cannot tell me that we don't have a right to know the cost per kilometer. Even if it's an undulating landscape, give us all the facts and the details of the cost per kilometer. That's all we'll ask for. Other questions as regards the loans taken. Let me finish.
No. I will
Let
keep
me
quiet
finish.
for you to damage
Let me
information.
finish.
Listen to me.
Minister, you will
Listen
not
to
allow me to speak. The minister will not allow me to speak.
No. Don't do that with me.
Minister will
Don't
not
do
allow
that
me
with
to
me.
speak.
I was in your studio.
Minister will not
and
allow
when
me
the
to
first
speak.
section was on, and I ran the figures. And what you're asking us is 750 kilometers of coastal highway. We should tell you cost per kilometer. So you multiply by 750. That's nonsensical.
No, so tell me the cost per kilometer. There's nothing too hard for you to tell me that figure. You've not still told me that figure, so I was right on that point. The second point,
because you don't understand anything.
The second point I'm trying to make is
You don't understand anything. I'm a professor in this field.
Okay.
You don't understand anything.
What university gave you professorship in this field?
You cannot ask me to tell you a cost.
What university gave you professorship in engineering? I didn't know you were Professor Mai, Minister. I didn't know. So please, you've not been able to. You've never
been professor in practice.
In practice.
I'm professor in practice.
Okay.
I understand engineering very well.
So secondly,
and you have no knowledge of what you ask.
If you will let me,
you have no knowledge.
If you will let me ask.
So you keep quiet.
Okay.
And then stop.
Okay.
You know.
Minister, it's all right. Keep dignifying yourself and let the world see you for who you are. If you allow me speak. The other 100 kilometers that you said they've added to it, we would like to know the cost per kilometer of that one. And the Winsome Homes, the case is in court. Now, I would like to know the cost per kilometer for that one. I would like to also know the over 700 billion first tranche of loan you guys got for this project. Has the money been spent? How was the money deployed? I would also like to know. I would also like to know the terms of that loan. All right, how many years? What's the payback period? What's the payback term of that loan? And for the Winsome Homes, isn't it interesting that as somebody that's been a governor in the state, you know the law, a case is in court, and then you're coming to talk about the details of the cases in court. Because you denied that the case was not in court, now you've already accepted that the case is in court. So is it not just better you thrash it out with the woman that has been reporting a case in public that we all heard, and I ask you questions based on that? So, Minister, just answer the questions. I've got no axe to grind with you. You know that. We've spoken many times. In fact, when your people call to book, I booked them, and I said you should come on air. So please just tell us those information. It's very important, Minister.
I'm not hearing, even though this guy is not.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Nigerian Army Authority has issued a statement denying threat messages issued against members of the public ahead of the planned mass protest slated for October 20, 2025 to demand for the release and freedom of the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, just as the organizer and chief campaigner, Omoyele Sowore, the publisher of Sahara Reporters news media, met to seek understanding with the former president of Nigeria, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, who, according to Sowore, promised to visit President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to discuss the issue with him. Nigerian Army, in a statement on Friday, said, "The attention of the Nigerian Army, NA, has been drawn to a misleading publication by Sahara Reporters alleging that a Facebook page purportedly operated by military personnel issued veiled threats against certain individuals ahead of a planned October 20th protest. The report is not only false but a deliberate attempt to misinform the public and discredit the noble institution of the Nigerian Army. For the avoidance of doubt, the Nigerian Army has only two official social media handles, namely at HQ Nigerian Army and at Nigerian Army Info, which are duly verified on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter, Instagram and YouTube. Any other page or account outside these verified handles does not belong to the Nigerian Army and should be disregarded in its entirety. It is pertinent to state that certain civilians and online content creators now operate pages that post military-related contents purely for the purpose of generating online traffic and monetary gain. Such pages have no affiliation whatsoever with the Nigerian Army. The NA therefore dissociates itself completely from any post, statement, or activity emanating from these unauthorized sources. The Nigerian Army remains a professional, disciplined and apolitical institution committed to the defense and unity of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. In the discharge of its constitutional responsibilities, the NA continues to uphold the highest standards of professionalism, adherence to the rule of law, and respect for human rights. The general public and media practitioners are hereby enjoined to verify all information concerning the Nigerian Army only through its official platforms or the Directorate of Army Public Relations before publication or dissemination. The Nigerian Army therefore urges Sahara reporters and other media outlets to exercise due diligence in verifying the authenticity of their sources to avoid the spread of falsehood capable of misleading the public and undermining national security. Omoyele Sowore, in a statement made available through his personal social media accounts on Friday, said that, "Earlier today in Abuja, I met with former President Goodluck Jonathan to discuss the continued incarceration of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. President Jonathan agreed that there is an urgent and compelling need to address this matter decisively and justly. I thank him sincerely for recognizing the importance of resolving Kanu's case in the interest of peace, fairness, and national healing. Particularly assuring was that he promised to meet Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu to discuss this issue as soon as possible." With this, former President Jonathan joins a growing list of Nigerians who have called for justice in Nnamdi Kanu's case, a list that already includes ex-Vice President Atiku Abubakar, Femi Falana, San, Senator Shehu Sani, and many others across political and regional divides. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu remains in detention today because he took up the just cause of confronting the long-standing issue of marginalization in Nigeria. Like other ethnic and regional activists whose politically motivated cases have been withdrawn or dismissed, Nnamdi Kanu should also be released without further delay. I once again call on all political, cultural, ethnic, and religious leaders across Nigeria to join this noble cause. In particular, I invite my brothers and sisters from the Southeast, Mr. Peter Obi, Charles Chukwuma Soludo, Alex Ciotti, Francis Nwaifaru, Peter Mbar, Hope Uzodinma, Obiageli Ezekwesili, John Mbata of Ohaneze and Igbo worldwide, as well as Nigerians of conscience everywhere, to lend their voices to the call for justice and freedom. Nnamdi Kanu should be set free, and I remain firmly committed to peacefully mobilizing for justice and freedom in this matter. On Thursday, Omoyele Sowore in a statement challenged the decision to set free and grant presidential state pardons to convicted individuals by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu without considering the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. According to Sowore, today, President Bola Tinubu extended pardons to a long list of convicted individuals, including a cocaine trafficker serving a life sentence, an alleged coup plotter, Maman Vatsa, the late Nnamdi Azikiwe and Herbert Macaulay, and even Farouk Lawan, the former lawmaker convicted for taking bribes on tape. He also pardoned other known fraudsters and corrupt politicians. Yet, in all of this, Tinubu refuses to even consider the release of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, who has been unjustly detained for years despite multiple court orders mandating his freedom. It is a glaring hypocrisy. Criminals and political thieves are forgiven, celebrated, and rehabilitated, while a man demanding self-determination and justice remains behind bars and tossed around in courts with the pretense that somehow it is about law. Earlier, Sowore raised an alarm that the presidency is using DSS to contact and threaten politicians from the Southeast, warning them not to endorse the Free Nnamdi Kanu Now movement or participate in Free Nnamdi Kanu Now, the planned march to Aso Rock Villa. They've contacted some names mentioned in my postings to gaslight them, claiming the protest was to foment chaos and violence. They're terrified. However, we move forward and cannot be stopped.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria has accepted the resignation of the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Jeffrey Uche-Naji, who had been accused of forging the degree certificate of the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, and the certificate of completion of service for the one-year mandatory National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, after he allegedly failed an exit course, virology, repeatedly at the university. Nigeria presidency, in a statement made available a few minutes ago by the presidential spokesperson, Bayo Onanuga, stated that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has accepted the resignation of Jeffrey Uche-Naji, the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, following some allegations against him. President Tinubu appointed Naji in August 2023. He resigned today in a letter thanking the president for allowing him to serve Nigeria. Naji said he has been a target of blackmail by political opponents. President Tinubu thanked him for his service and wished him well in future endeavors. Earlier, Nigeria's state-controlled media, NTA, had reported that the Minister of Innovation, Science and Technology, Uche Jeffrey Naji, has dismissed reports questioning his academic qualifications, describing them as politically motivated attempts to tarnish his image. The minister has firmly defended the authenticity of his University of Nigeria, Nsukka degree. Speaking through his spokesperson, Dr. Robert Ngwu, the minister said records from UNN confirm he graduated in July 1985 with a bachelor's degree in microbiology and biochemistry, second-class honors, lower division. He described recent reports denying his graduation as false, malicious, and politically driven, alleging that the controversy began after opposition figures took key positions within the university. Naji revealed that the Federal High Court in Abuja has issued protective orders restraining the university from tampering with his records and directing the release of his academic transcript. Reaffirming his focus on national service, the minister said no amount of political blackmail or media trial will distract him from advancing innovation and technology in Nigeria. He urged the University of Nigeria to uphold its motto, to restore the dignity of man, and resist being used for partisan purposes. In a swift reaction on Tuesday, Enugu state government denied sponsoring allegations of certificate forgery against the Minister of Innovation, Science, and Technology, Chief Uche Naji, urging him to carry his cross and clear his name before Nigerians. The government, in a press statement issued in Enugu on Monday by the Director of Information in the Ministry of Information and Communication, Mr. Chukwuemeka Nibo, said it had no hand whatsoever in the controversies surrounding the minister's academic records. The Enugu state government dissociates itself completely from these allegations. The honorable minister must carry his own cross and clear his name before Nigerians, instead of dragging the government into issues that are entirely personal to him, Mr. Nibo declared. The Director of Information recalled that Chief Naji had invited journalists to a world press conference scheduled for Monday at 2 p.m. to address the matter, but failed to show up. A large number of Nigerian and international journalists reportedly gathered on the minister's invitation to hear directly from him. But rather than appear before them to answer questions and establish his innocence, the minister absconded, leaving behind proxies who could not withstand the barrage of legitimate questions from journalists. Who can narrate Chief Naji's UNN story better than him? Why invite the media, only to outsource the conference? Why send third parties, who lack the answers to critical questions, if he truly has nothing to hide? Mr. Nibo queried. Did he, for his screening, present a purported degree certificate to the Senate showing that he graduated from the prestigious University of Nigeria, Nsukka, UNN, in July 1985? Is it true that he deposed in a federal high court filing in Abuja that he was not issued any degree certificate by UNN, and, if so, how did he come about the degree certificate he presented to the Senate? Is it also true that while he claims to have graduated in July 1985, he applied to the university to retake virology, course code, MCB 431, in the September 1985 supplementary examination, having failed the course? Is it also true that the university, in a November 8, 1985 letter, informed Uche Naji that he again failed virology, course code, MCB 431, in the supplementary examinations, but could register to retake the course in the June 1986 examinations, provided he paid an examination fee of 4 naira. Is it true that on January 3, 1986, he again applied to retake the virology, course code, MCB 431, examination in June 1986, stating in his letter that the receipt for the payment of the 4 naira receipt fee had been attached? Is it true that while he claims to be in possession of a university degree, he only submitted his secondary school WASC certificate to the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, for his participation in the 2023 governorship election. Why did Uche Naji's proxy state at the Abuja press conference that the minister graduated, while avoiding stating categorically that he was issued a degree certificate? Did he also present a purported NYSC discharge certificate showing that he commenced his national service in April 1985, 3 months before his supposed graduation, and served until July 1986, an unusual duration of 13 months instead of the usual 12 months of national service? Whereas the CEO of the NYSC at the time he claimed to have undergone the national service was Colonel Ede Akpan, January 1984 to December 1987, Uche Naji's NYSC discharge certificate was signed by Colonel Animashon Brimo, who was NYSC CEO from January 1988 to December 1990. Is it true that NYSC certificates issued up till October 1990 had 6-digit numbering devoid of alphabetic characters, but Uche Naji's discharge certificate, supposedly issued in 1986, was numbered A231309, which includes the alphabet A? And above all, is it a fact that he deposed to an affidavit in the suit he filed in court that UNN did not issue him any certificate? And if that is the case, Nigerians want to know how he came about the certificate he submitted to the Senate of his own free will in 2023. These are the clarifications Nigerians earnestly yearn for, and Chief Uche Naji is urged to brave up to clear his name, if he is truly innocent, rather than trading blames, Nebo stressed. Daily Post newspaper had reported that an Abuja Federal High Court has rejected a bid by the Minister of Innovation, Science, and Technology, Uche Naji, to stop the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, UNN, from releasing his academic records. The Minister of Education, National Universities Commission, NUC, UNN, the university's Vice-Chancellor, its Registrar and the Senate of the institution were listed as respondents in the suit. An application for interim injunction filed by the minister's lawyer asked the court to restrain the respondents from acting on a request for release of his academic records. However, Justice Hausa Yilwa turned down the application. The minister had prayed the court for an order granting leave to the applicant to issue the prerogative writ of prohibition on the 3th, 2, 5th and the 7th respondents, the VC, Registrar and Senate of the school, from tampering with or continuing to tamper with the applicant's academic records at UNN. The minister also prayed for an order granting him leave to issue the prerogative writ of mandamus compelling the 3rd, 2, 5th and the 7th respondents to release to him his academic transcript at the varsity. Other reliefs sought include an order granting leave to the applicant to issue the prerogative writ of mandamus compelling the 1st and 2nd respondents to ensure, utilizing their supervisory and disciplinary powers, that the 3rd, 2, 5th and the 7th respondents release to the applicant his academic transcript at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. An interim order of injunction restraining the 3rd, 2, 5th and the 7th respondents from tampering or continuing to tamper with the applicant's academic records at the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, pending the determination of the substantive suit. In rejecting the application after listening to the counsel, the judge held, I have therefore perused the 34-paragraph affidavit and the 6-paragraph affidavit of urgency deposed to by the applicant, the grounds upon which this application is made, the exhibits attached thereto and the further affidavit of 6 paragraphs deposed to by Martin Luther Akawi. I have equally considered the written address of counsel. I shall therefore refer to paragraphs 15, 16, 22, 23, 24, 25 and 29 of the affidavit in support of this application, Exhibits 1, 2d and paragraphs 3, 4 and 5 of the further affidavit. I'm of the humble view from the facts deposed in the affidavits, alongside the exhibits attached, that the applicant has sufficient interest in the matter to which this application relates. Thus, this application is meritorious. Consequently, I hereby grant Prayer 1, 2 and 3 only. Prayer 4 is declined. Having been refused, the granting of reliefs 1, 2, 3 shall not serve as injunctive reliefs against any of the parties. UNN had disowned the minister's certificate in a letter addressed to Premium Times, written by the Vice-Chancellor, Professor Simon Orchunya. In the letter dated October 2, 2025, the university maintained that the minister did not complete his studies. We refer to your letter dated the 29th of September 2025 in respect of the above subject matter. We can confirm that Mr. Jeffrey Uchechukwu, with matriculation number 1981 30,725, was admitted by the University of Nigeria, Nsukka in 1981. From every available records and information from the University of Nigeria, Nsukka, we are unable to confirm that Mr. Jeffrey Uchechukwu, the current Minister of Science and Technology, graduated from the University of Nigeria in July 1985, as there are no records of his completion of study in the University of Nigeria, Nsukka. Flowing from above, the University of Nigeria, Nsukka did not and consequently, could not have issued the purported certificate, or at all, in July 1985 to Mr. Jeffrey Uchechukwu, the current Minister of Science and Technology. This conclusion is also in consonance with an earlier letter dated May 13, 2025, reference number, Run, SR-RV, issued by the University to the Public Complaints Commission in respect of the same subject matter, copy attached, Orchunya wrote.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Princess Ola Torera Maje Kadunmianiru from Ogun State and a Commonwealth Award winner who is currently pursuing a master degree in law has called on the federal government of Nigeria under the leadership of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to immediately release the detained Biafra Republic agitation leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, stating in a statement personally signed and made available to Media Newsroom on Monday, that 10 years of detention without conviction is a grave violation of the fundamental human rights of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, specifically stated verbatim that the continued detention of Mr. Kanu without conviction is not merely a legal anomaly. It is a profound failure of justice and a grave violation of his fundamental human rights. His prolonged detention exposes the widening gap between Nigeria's constitutional expectations and the daily realities of citizens. We must have a justice system that acts with both fairness and decisive strength, not one ensnared in endless procedural limbo and mired in public distrust. According to the princess, across the span of a decade, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu has endured one of the longest and most troubling pre-trial detentions in Nigeria's history. Arrested in 2015, accused, pleading not guilty, and never convicted, he remains confined in a blatant defiance of the most fundamental human rights principles. Where is justice when a man stands unconvicted for 10 years, while those charged with upholding justice remain silent? The continued detention of Mr. Kanu without conviction is not merely a legal anomaly. It is a profound failure of justice and a grave violation of his fundamental human rights. His prolonged detention exposes the widening gap between Nigeria's constitutional expectations and the daily realities of citizens. We must have a justice system that acts with both fairness and decisive strength, not one ensnared in endless procedural limbo and mired in public distrust. No charge, however grave, should ever eclipse the principle that every individual is presumed innocent until proven guilty. That principle is the very cornerstone of law and must never be broken, regardless of who holds power. As we call for Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's immediate and unconditional freedom, my heart goes out to millions of Nigerians, across tribal lines, generations, and economic classes, from Borno to Kwara to Lagos, crying out for help against armed violence, forced displacement, demolitions, unlawful detentions, untimely deaths, and the persistent scarcity of life's most basic necessities. Beyond politics, every life matters. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu's health and spirit are at grave risk, after 10 years behind bars without a proven crime. This declaration is an urgent proclamation. We will count every second, every hour, every day, and continue to galvanize until Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is restored to his rightful freedom. Nigeria now stands at a cross of roads, where history will judge the true motives of those in power. The eyes of the world are watching, and the conscience of the nation is restless. The promise of our democracy depends not only on acts of courage within the halls of power but also on the bold, united actions of citizens. About Mazi Nnamdi Kanu. Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, born in Isiama Afara, Abia State, Nigeria, is a Nigerian-born British citizen and leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB. He has long advocated peacefully for the recognition and protection of the political, economic, and cultural rights of citizens of Nigeria's southeast. He has never been convicted of any crime, nor accused of any act of violence. His prolonged detention, despite serious legal questions surrounding his rendition and years of unbroken pre-trial custody, remains a striking violation of due process and a challenge to Nigeria's constitutional and humanitarian commitments, Princess Ola Torera Maje Kadunmi stated. Princess Ola Torera Maje Kadunmi, as stated in her website, is a transformational executive with over 2 decades of achievements across finance, technology, and global trade. She has driven strategic growth for multinational organizations and entrepreneurially. An incorruptible force for visionary progress, she remains steadfast in her commitment to elevating living standards and ensuring that no citizen is left behind. Ola Torera earned her MBA from Emory University with merit scholarships and completed executive leadership programs at the Harvard Kennedy School, Women and Power, Stockholm School of Economics, Financial Modeling and Innovation, and IMD Switzerland, Leadership. She is currently pursuing a master's in law and a doctorate in leadership, ed. Her work has earned numerous accolades, including the World Leadership Congress Award, Commonwealth Award, His Royal Majesty Uni Royal Award and Queen Maremi Leadership Award. She has delivered keynote addresses at global forums such as The Economist Growth Crossings, Women in Leadership Dubai, the Toronto Global Economic Forum, Africacom and Youth Connect.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, may have given a clearer picture on how some companies are apparently aiding and making more money from the ongoing war in his country Ukraine, saying, since the start of the war 4 years ago, some unnamed companies in the United States, US, United Kingdom, UK, China, Germany, Taiwan, Switzerland, Japan, Korea Republic, Netherlands are producing components Russia under President Vladimir Putin is using to produce weapons of mass destruction to kill his people. This, Zelensky in his own words said on Monday that, in the 4th year of the full-scale war, Russia continues to obtain components for producing weapons. During the massive combined strike on Ukraine on the night of October 5th, Russia used 549 weapon systems containing 102,785 foreign-made components from companies in the United States, China and Taiwan, the United Kingdom, Germany, Switzerland, Japan, the Republic of Korea, and the Netherlands. Nearly 100,688 of foreign-made parts were in the launched attack drones, about 1,500 were in Iskanders, 192 in Kinzhal missiles, and 405 in Calibers. Zelensky stated this in a statement made available through his personal social media profile on Monday, after about 30 people were injured as a result of the Russian attack on a moving passenger train, killing 1 person in Shostka district of Ukraine on Saturday. According to Zelensky, Ukraine is preparing new sanctions against those who help Russia and its war, and we have communicated proposals to curb the supply schemes. Partners already possess the detailed data on each company and each product. They know what to target and how to respond. This week, the G7 sanctions coordinators will meet, and we expect a systemic decision to ensure that the sanctions are truly effective. It is crucial to shut down every scheme that circumvents sanctions, because Russia uses each one to keep killing. The world has the power to stop this. In the 4th year of the full-scale war, Russia continues to obtain components for producing weapons. During the massive combined strike on Ukraine on the night of October 5th, Russia used 549 weapon systems containing 102,785 foreign-made components from companies in the United States, China and Taiwan, the United Kingdom, Germany, Switzerland, Japan, the Republic of Korea, and the Netherlands. Nearly 100,688 of foreign-made parts were in the launched attack drones, about 1,500 were in Iskanders, 192 in Kinzhal missiles, and 405 in Calibers. In particular, companies in the United States manufacture converters for Kh-101 missiles and Shahd, Iran-type drones, sensors for those UAVs and for Kinzhal missiles, analog to digital converters for drones and missiles, and microelectronics for missiles. At least 50 different microelectronic components in each Shahd are produced in China and Taiwan. Microcontrollers for UAVs are made in Switzerland, while microcomputers for drone flight control are produced in the United Kingdom. Opto-isolators for cruise missiles come from Japan, switching connectors from Germany. Russia also uses processors manufactured in the Netherlands and servomotors and bearings made in the Republic of Korea. In a separate statement, Zelensky said, "Since the start of the full-scale invasion, the capacity of Ukraine's defense industry has increased by tenfold. Our production potential for drones and missiles alone will reach $35 billion next year. Already over 40% of the weapons in use at the front are either made in Ukraine or produced with Ukraine. And the share of our weapons will only grow. The task for manufacturers, for the government of Ukraine, for all institutions involved is that by the end of the year no less than 50% of the weapons at the front must be our Ukrainian weapons, and this task must be accomplished. We need funding to unleash our full potential, and we are working with every partner who can help make this possible. It is time to start exporting our Ukrainian weapons, those types we have in surplus and can therefore export, to finance the types of weapons that are especially needed for our defense. I have already instructed the government, the office, and the Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine to develop and present the key elements of such an export system. The working title of this program is Zbroya, Our Export Product. Agreements are already in place to launch export-import platforms in Europe, the United States, and the Middle East. The task is to have these platforms operational by the end of the year. I said this during the International Defense Industries Forum, which we are opening for the third time in Ukraine today. On the recent attack in Shostka area of Ukraine, Zelensky said, "Russia ignores or rebuffs literally every opportunity to end the war and guarantee security. Putin wants to wage it, and do it by terrorist, despicable methods. Russia must feel the consequences. Europe, America, the G7, and the G20 have the power to deal with any terrorist." A savage Russian drone strike on the railway station in Shostka, Sumy region. All emergency services are already on the scene and have begun helping people. All information about the injured is being established. So far, we know of at least 30 victims. Preliminary reports indicate that both Uktsalaznija staff and passengers were at the site of the strike. The Russians could not have been unaware that they were striking civilians. And this is terror the world must not ignore. Every day Russia takes people's lives. And only strength can make them stop. We've heard resolute statements from Europe and America, and it's high time to turn them all into reality, together with everyone who refuses to accept murder and terror as normal. Lip service is not enough now. Strong action is needed. Andriy Sybiha, Ukraine Minister of Foreign Affairs, also said that the attacks were targeted and deliberate Russian drone strikes on passenger trains in Shostka, Sumy region. Not one, but two strikes one after another. This is one of the most barbaric Russian tactics, the so-called double tap, with the second attack hitting rescuers and people who are evacuating. Russian terrorists must get strong responses for this deliberate and brutal terror against civilians. Words are not enough. New devastating sanctions. New strengthening for Ukraine. This can be done and must be done to raise the cost of this war for Russia. Putin must feel the danger of continuing this war personally for him and his regime. Jan Lipavsky, Czech Minister of Foreign Affairs, while reacting to the attack in the Shostka community, said, "While we are voting on Czechia's security, Russia keeps showing the world its true face. The attack on the train running from Shostka to Kyiv is yet another proof of its barbarity and state terrorism orchestrated by the Kremlin. My thoughts are with all those injured and their loved ones." But Viktor Viktop, a commentator, in his analysis, said that Zelensky claimed that Russia allegedly targeted a passenger train at the Shostka railway station. There is video of the strike, but upon closer inspection, there was no mention of any passengers. The footage shows the strike hitting a diesel locomotive and a freight train loaded with containers immediately behind it. Video 1. It looks like a typical military train. There are no pure passenger trains. Yes, one car looks similar, but the rest of the train is filled with containers. Photo 1. Most likely, this single passenger train was used to protect the cargo, a common practice when military transport is disguised as civilian. Now let's look at the schedule. No passenger trains departed from Shostka today. The last train was on October 3rd, and the next one won't be until the 5th. So it's logical to assume that there simply couldn't have been any peaceful passengers there. The free movement of military cargo across Ukraine has ended. Russia has finally started doing what it's supposed to do.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Two separate courts in the Nigeria Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, on Tuesday fixed October 27th and November 20th, 2025 for the commencement of the lawsuits brought before them by the founder and publisher of Sahara Reporters, Omoyele Sowore, and the Department of State Service, DSS, over issue of posts published on X and Facebook social media platforms that allegedly described President Bola Ahmed Tinubu as a criminal after the president allegedly said there is no more corruption in Nigeria while the president was speaking at an event in Brazil in the month of August 2025. According to Omoyele Sowore's lawyer, Tope Temokun, today, at the Federal High Court in Abuja, proceedings commenced in the historic cases filed by rights activist Omoyele Sowore challenging the clampdown on free speech and political expression by the Department of State Services, SSS, in collusion with global social media giants Meta, Facebook, Instagram, and X Corporation, Twitter. The suits are Omoyele Sowore vs. SSS and Meta, FHC, ABJ, CS, 1887-2025. Omoyele Sowore vs. SSS and X Corporation, FHC, ABJ, CS, 1888-2025. Sowore was represented by a formidable team of lawyers, led by Tope Temokun, Abubakar Marshall, Alexander Aketa, Dr. S.M. Oyaha, Dr. Maxwell Opara, Akin Sowore, and Akoje Sava. Representation for the respondents. Meta appeared through Mefesimo Teo Yetabo, San. X Corporation and the DSS had no counsel present in court proceedings. The court granted motions ex-parte filed by Sowore's counsel for leave to serve Meta and X Corporation outside jurisdiction through electronic means. The originating motion against Meta was also served in court on Meta's counsel. Adjournment. The court adjourned both matters to November 20, 2025, for hearing. These suits filed, following the DSS attempted censorship of Sowore's social media post, calling the president a criminal, mark a significant stand against both local repression and international collaboration in silencing dissenting voices. Sowore insists that no government agency or foreign corporation has the right to muzzle Nigerians in the digital space, Barrister Tope Temokun stated on September 30, 2025. At a separate court where the federal government of Nigeria filed a 5-count charges against the news media publisher, Omoyele Sowore and the DSS had planned to arraign the publisher before the court. Vanguard newspaper reported that, when the matter came up, Sowore's counsel, Marshal Abubakar, objected to the charges being read, arguing that his client had not been properly served. He also noted the absence of legal representation for X. However, Meta was represented in court by a team led by senior advocate of Nigeria, Teo Oyetobo. Justice Mohammed Umar, presiding, directed that Sowore be served in court, an order not opposed by any of the parties, including Mohammed Babadoko, Director of Public Prosecutions of the Federation. The court then adjourned the case to October 27 for commencement of trial. Punch newspaper also reported that the DPPF then applied for an order to serve Sowore in open court, which the judge granted. Sowore accepted the documents in court. He subsequently requested 3 days, as provided by law, to study the charge and prepare his defense. While the DPPF objected, Justice Garba upheld the request and adjourned the arraignment to October 27. The court will adjourn to the 27th day of October for the arraignment of the defendants, Justice Garba said. The suit dated the 16th of September 2025 was launched after Sowore allegedly refused to delete the controversial posts about the president. The Sahara Reporter's publisher was accused of using his official X handle to make the post. This criminal at official PBAT actually went to Brazil to state that there is no more corruption under his regime in Nigeria. What audacity to lie shamelessly. The alleged offending post, said to be contrary to Section 24(2)(b) of the Cybercrimes Prohibition and Prevention Act 2024, was said to have been made on August 25 within the jurisdiction of the Federal High Court. The charges were brought on behalf of the DSS and the federal government by MB Abu Bakr, Director of Public Prosecutions at the Federal Ministry of Justice, alongside 4 other counsel to the DSSM, E. Ernest, U.B. Buller, Dr. C.S. Ez, and E.G. Orabor. Social media companies X Incorporation and Meta Platforms Incorporation are listed as co-defendants. Confirming the legal action in a Facebook post last week, Sowore wrote, "The State Security Service, alias at Officials Inc. today filed a 5-count charge at the Federal High Court in Abuja against X, formerly Twitter Facebook, and myself. They claimed that because I called Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu a criminal, I have somehow committed a set of novel offenses they invented and spread across 5 counts. It's hard to believe there's anyone sensible left in these offices that should be making Nigeria work. Regardless, I will be present whenever this case is assigned for trial." Revolutiono. Punch Online had earlier reported that the human rights activist and African Action Congress candidate in the 2023 election vowed not to delete the controversial tweet, despite a request from the DSS to X demanding its removal. Restating his stance, Sowore wrote, "This morning, X, formerly Twitter, officially contacted me about the despicable threat letter they received from the lawless DSS over my tweet on Tinubu. One option I will not be taking is deleting the tweet. Thank you, at X."
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Information from the Nigerian presidency has indicated that there is a plan by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to begin legal action against the country's former president, Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, over sustained and continuous rumors in certain quarters that ex-President Jonathan may have indicated interest to recontest as Nigeria president in 2027. The Special Advisor to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Information and Strategy, Bayo Onanuga, said Jonathan is welcome to join the 2027 presidential electoral race, but Jonathan will have his date in the court of the land. Indeed, the jury will determine whether Jonathan, who was sworn in twice as president, satisfies the constitutional requirements and is eligible to contest the presidency and be sworn in, if successful, for a 3rd term in office. It would be recalled that ex-President Jonathan was one of the most criticized presidents in Nigeria, with politicians, including President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who was then a chieftain of the Action Congress of Nigeria, ACN, forming a coalition of All Progressives Congress, APC, to defeat the incumbent president in 2015. Currently, there is also a coalition formed by politicians in Nigeria, the African Democratic Congress, ADC, to defeat and remove President Tinubu from office in 2027, and lately, reports indicated that the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, is considering joining the African Democratic Congress, ADC, but no official announcement has been made. the speculation intensified after Jonathan met with ADC National Chairman David Mark in late September 2025, amidst ongoing discussions about the 2027 presidential election. And Jonathan's closed-door meeting with ADC leaders on September 25, 2025, fueled widespread speculation about his potential run for the presidency on their platform. In a statement issued on Monday, Bayo Onanuga, the spokesperson to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, said, "As we begin the march towards the 2027 elections prematurely foisted on the nation by the desperation of the opposition ganging up against President Bola Tinubu despite his glaring giant economic strides, we are once again regaled with a cacophony of voices, most of them full of sound and fury, signifying nothing, to paraphrase inimitable William Shakespeare in one of his classic works, Macbeth." One recent statement that stands out in its absurdity is Professor Jerry Garner's. The former Minister of Information and National Orientation, moving to draft former President Goodluck Jonathan into the 2007 presidential race, affirmed that the former president would contest the coming election on the platform of the discredited People's Democratic Party, PDP, which bequeathed a legacy of economic ruins, after 16 years of bad governance. Garner even deluded himself, asserting that the former president would defeat President Tinubu to reclaim power after 12 years. Professor Garner of the defunct MAMSER fame is free to delude himself and engage in his usual comedy. After all, Jonathan's entering the race would provide another job for the Niger state-born former university don. However, we should caution former President Jonathan to be wary of the PDP sugar-coated cheerleaders. Politicians of Jerry Garner's ilk merely want to lure him into the race to satisfy their personal, political, religious, and ethnic interests. They will abandon him midstream, as they did in 2015, and leave gentleman Jonathan in the lurch. Don't get us wrong, President Jonathan reserves the right to run if he wishes. It is his inalienable right to contest the presidency again. President Tinubu will wholeheartedly welcome him if he decides to enter the race. But Jonathan will have his date in the court of the land. Indeed, the jury will determine whether Jonathan, who was sworn in twice as president, satisfies the constitutional requirements and is eligible to contest the presidency and be sworn in, if successful, for a third term in office. Shorn of all those selfish considerations for which some PDP big guns find his candidacy appealing, President Jonathan will also have his encounter with the people as to whether he has anything new to offer after his disastrous 6 years, for which they voted him out in 2015. Let us remind ourselves about Jonathan's record. We cannot forget in a hurry how his regime, devoid of any clear economic agenda, engaged in frivolous spending, ran the economy aground and put the country in dire straits. The nation's economic downturn, which President Tinubu is working very hard to overcome, actually began under President Jonathan. The Jonathan administration severely damaged the economy, and all key indicators declined under his watch. Under him, the so-called business moguls allocated foreign exchange to import fuel, simply pocketing the dollars without importing anything. Some of those big men still have court cases on the issue today. Jonathan and his national security advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, retired, freely distributed security funds to friends and cronies. In 2010, President Jonathan inherited a total of $66 billion, of which $46 billion was in foreign reserves and $20 billion in the noble but abused excess crude account. By 2015, when the people democratically removed him from office, the foreign reserves had fallen below $30 billion, and the excess crude account had been depleted to $2 billion, despite generating record revenue from crude oil sales that the country had never achieved in more than 25 years combined. It is on record that between 2010 and 2013, crude oil sold for an average of $100 per barrel. By December 2014, however, the Jonathan-led federal government could no longer pay salaries to federal civil servants. At least 28 states across the country owed workers huge salary arrears. In contrast, President Tinubu has taken bold decisions over the last 28 months to reset the economy, removing the ruinous fuel subsidy and abolishing multiple exchange rates, which paved the way for arbitrage to flourish. The president has stabilized the economy in slightly over 2 years in office. In 2025 Q2, the gross domestic product grew by 4.23%, the highest in 4 years, outpacing the 3.4% projected by the International Monetary Fund. Inflation decreased to 20.12% in August 2025, the lowest level in 3 years. The foreign reserves stand presently at $42.03 billion. The Naira has virtually stabilized. Investor confidence in our economy has been restored, and investors are betting on Nigeria. In plain language, the nation has turned the corner, and our people have started reaping the gains of the bold reforms instituted by the Tinubu administration. Road infrastructure is being boosted. Old roads are being reconstructed while new ones, like the Lagos-Calabar Coastal Highway and the Sokoto-Badagry Highway, among others, are springing up. The government is addressing security issues in some parts of the country. We can go on and on, reeling out the many macroeconomic gains of the Tinubu administration. However, the point is that the PDP and Jerry Garner's co-travelers broke the economy. President Tinubu is fixing it. President Jonathan and others are welcome to the 2027 race. They broke the economy before, but millions of Nigerians, who will not easily forget the recent past, will not allow him to return and run it down again.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Friday stated that many world leaders who do come out publicly to condemn the Israel war in Gaza, do privately thank Israel for staging the war against Hamas, and according to Benjamin Netanyahu, the world leaders tell me how much they value Israel's superb intelligence services that have prevented time and again terrorist attacks in their capitals, time and again saving countless lives. General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force Intelligence, once said, if the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 CIAs. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Merz admitted the truth. This, Benjamin Netanyahu stated when the speech was being broadcast live via huge loudspeakers that were placed on the Gaza border while the Israel Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, was speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, which, his appearance drew a mix of applause and protest, with some delegates walking out of the hall as he took the stage. You know deep down that Israel is fighting your fight. I want to tell you a secret. Behind closed doors, many of the leaders who publicly condemn us, privately thank us, Benjamin Netanyahu stated in response. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated and blamed the Israel war in Gaza on Iran, saying, Iran terror axis threatened the peace of the entire world. Some parts of the long speech by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations General Assembly are presented verbatim below. Mr. President, the families of our dear hostages languishing in the dungeons of Gaza, ladies and gentlemen, last year, I stood at this podium, and I showed this map. It shows the curse of Iran's terror axis. This axis threatened the peace of the entire world. It threatened the stability of our region and the very existence of my country Israel. Iran was rapidly developing a massive nuclear weapons program and a massive ballistic missile program. These were meant not only to destroy Israel, they were meant also to threaten the United States and blackmail nations everywhere. From Gaza, Yahya Sinwar dispatched waves of Hamas terrorists. They stormed into Israel on October 7th and committed acts of unspeakable savagery. From Lebanon, Hassan Nasrallah had launched thousands of missiles and rockets at our cities, terrorizing our citizens. In Syria, the murderous dictator Assad hosted Iran's forces, tightening a noose of death around our throats. In Yemen, the Houthis launched ballistic missiles at Israel, while choking global trade at the mouth of the Red Sea. So what's happened over the past year? We've hammered the Houthis, including yesterday. we crushed the bulk of Hamas's terror machine. We crippled Hezbollah, taking out most of its leaders and much of its weapons arsenal. Remember those beepers, the pages? We paged Hezbollah, and believe me, they got the message and thousands of terrorists dropped to the ground. We destroyed Assad's armaments in Syria. We deterred Iran's Shiite militias in Iraq. And most importantly, and above everything else that I could say to you all that we did in this past year, in this past decade, we devastated Iran's atomic weapons and ballistic missile programs. Here's where things stand today. Half the Houthi leadership are Yemen, gone. Yahya Sinwar in Gaza, gone. Hassan Nasrallah in Lebanon, gone. The Assad regime in Syria, gone. Those militias in Iraq, well, they're still deterred. And their leaders, if they attack Israel, will also be gone. And for Iran's top military commanders and its top nuclear scientists, well, they're gone too. Israel's 12-day war with Iran, which I renamed Operation Rising Lion, that's from the Bible. This 12-day war will go down in the annals of military history. Our daring pilots neutralized Iran's missile defenses and took control of the skies over Tehran. You saw this. Israeli fighter pilots and American B-2 pilots bombed Iran's nuclear enrichment sites. I want to thank President Trump for his bold and decisive action. President Trump and I promised to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. And we delivered on that promise. We removed an existential threat to Israel, and a mortal threat to the civilized world. We lifted a dark cloud that could have claimed millions and millions of lives. But, ladies and gentlemen, we must remain vigilant. We must remain absolutely clear-minded and vigilant. We must not allow Iran to rebuild its military nuclear capacities. Iran's stockpile of enriched uranium, these stockpiles must be eliminated. And tomorrow, UN Security Council sanctions on Iran must be snapped back. Thanks to the resolve of our people, the courage of our soldiers, and the bold decisions we took, Israel rebounded from its darkest day to deliver one of the most stunning military comebacks in history. But we're not done yet. The final remnants of Hamas are holed up in Gaza City. They vow to repeat the atrocities of October 7th again and again and again, no matter how diminished their forces. That is why Israel must finish the job. And that is why we want to do so as fast as possible. Ladies and gentlemen, much of the world no longer remembers October 7th. But we remember, Israel remembers October 7th. On that day, I'll tell you, you can remember October 7th too. You see this large pin here? It's a QR code. What I ask you to do is hold up your phones, zoom in, and you too will see why we fight, and why we must win. It's all in here. On October 7th, Hamas carried out the worst attack on Jews since the Holocaust. They slaughtered 1,200 innocent people, including over 40 Americans, and foreign nationals from dozens of countries represented here. They beheaded men. They raped women. They burned babies alive. They burned babies alive in front of their parents. What monsters! These monsters took more than 250 people hostage. Those included Holocaust survivors, grandmothers, and the grandchildren. Who takes hostage grandmothers and grandchildren? Hamas does. So far, we've brought home 207 of these hostages. But 48 still remain in the dungeons of Gaza. 20 of them are alive, starved, tortured, deprived of any daylight, deprived of humanity. These are the names of the 20 living hostages. Matan Angrest, Gali and Ziv Berman, brothers, Elkanah Bobot, Rom Braslavsky, Nimrod Cohen, Ariel and David Cuneo, another pair of brothers, Guy Gilboa Dalal, Eviatar David. You saw the picture of Eviatar David, emaciated, forced to dig his own grave. Maxim Herken, Eitan Horn, Segev Kalfan, Bar Cooperstein, Omri Meiron, Eitan Moore, Yosef Haim Ohana, Alon Ohal, Avanatin Nur and Matan Zangauka. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to do something I've never done before. I want to speak from this forum directly to those hostages through loudspeakers. I've surrounded Gaza with massive loudspeakers connected to this microphone in the hope that our dear hostages will hear my message. I will say it first in Hebrew, and then in English. Hebrew, our brave heroes. This is Prime Minister Netanyahu, speaking to you live from the United Nations. We have not forgotten you, not even for a second. The people of Israel are with you. We will not falter, and we will not rest, until we bring all of you home. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks to special efforts by Israeli intelligence, my words are now also being carried, they're streamed live to the cell phones of Gazans. So to the remaining Hamas leaders, and to the jailers of our hostages, I now say, lay down your arms, let my people go, free the hostages, all of them, the whole 48, free the hostages now. If you do, you will live. If you don't, Israel will hunt you down. Ladies and gentlemen, if Hamas agrees to our demands, the war could end right now. Gaza would be demilitarized, Israel would retain overriding security control, and a peaceful civilian authority would be established by Gazans and others committed to peace with Israel. Of course, you understand that the war in Gaza has affected every Israeli. But I am sure there are people in New York, London, Melbourne and elsewhere who are probably thinking, what does all of this have to do with me? The answer is, everything. Because our enemies are your enemies. Let's do something else. Another first at the UN. Let's do a pop quiz. Raise your hand if you know the answer. First question. Who shouts, "Death to America"? Is it A, Iran, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, the Houthis, or E, all of the above? All of the above. Correct. All of the above. Second question. Who has murdered Americans and Europeans in cold blood? A, Al-Qaeda, B, Hamas, C, Hezbollah, D, Iran, or E, all of the above? Correct again. All of the above. So here's the point I want to make. Our enemies hate all of us with equal venom. They want to drag the modern world back to the past, to a dark age of violence, fanaticism, and terror. I think many of you are already feeling in your own societies the radical Islamist surge. I'm sure you do. You know deep down that Israel is fighting your fight. I want to tell you a secret. Behind closed doors, many of the leaders who publicly condemn us, privately thank us. They tell me how much they value Israel's superb intelligence services that have prevented time and again terrorist attacks in their capitals, time and again saving countless lives. General George Keegan, former head of U.S. Air Force intelligence, once said, if the United States had to gather on its own the intelligence that Israel gives us, we would have to establish 5 CIAs. 5 CIAs. This past June, when Israel struck Iran's nuclear facilities, German Chancellor Merz admitted the truth. He said, Israel is doing the dirty work for all of us. President Trump understands better than any other leader that Israel and America face a common threat. He showed the world that when Iran and its proxies murder Americans, take Americans hostage, shout death to America, burn American flags and try to assassinate the President of the United States, not once, but twice. He showed them there is a price to pay for all that. Regrettably, many leaders who are represented in this hall, they send a very different message. Sure, in the days immediately following October 7th, many of them supported Israel. But that support quickly evaporated when Israel did what any self-respecting nation would do in the wake of such a savage attack.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
Justice James Omotosho of the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja on Friday ruled that the detained Biafra agitation leader, Nnamdi Kanu, has case to answer, because the Nigeria government prosecution team have provided some evidence that requires explanations from the detained Biafra leader. This, the coordinating lawyer to Nnamdi Kanu, Barrister Aloy Ejimakor, said the judgment of the court does not mean Nnamdi Kanu has been pronounced guilty. Rather, the ruling indicated that he should give explanations to certain evidences the federal government of Nigeria brought before the court. It would be recalled that the ruling on the no-case submission filed by Nnamdi Kanu that was earlier slated to be held on October 10, 2025 was abridged and rescheduled to Friday the 26th of September 2025. Justice James Omotosho also rejected request by Kanu to be transferred from custody of the Department of State Services, DSS, to the National Hospital Abuja for medical examination over alleged deteriorating health issues. The court subsequently ordered the President of Nigerian Medical Association, NMA, to constitute an investigation committee to examine Kanu's medical condition and submit a report to it in 8 days following objection by DSS to his request to be transferred to National Hospital for second opinion on his health condition. We had earlier in the year reported that the case between the federal government of Nigeria and the detained leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, apparently took a new technical twist after one of the lawyers of the detained Biafra leader, Paul Erekoro, San, presented and played 3 videos which the Federal High Court sitting in Abuja later admitted in evidence. The videos of former Nigeria Chief of Army Staff, retired General Theophilus Danjuma, saying, security operatives in the West Africa country, specifically, the armed forces are working together with the armed bandits to kill Nigerians, stressing that, if Nigerians depend on the armed forces to curb insecurity, they will all die one by one. Also that of Governor Hope Uzodinma of Imo State, saying, politicians are behind killings in the state. Lastly, and the most interesting video played at the court to counter the testimony or statement made by the DSS prosecutor witness over Nnamdi Kanu-led IPOB founding Eastern Security Network, ESN, allegedly created by group of youths in the southeastern geopolitical zone of Nigeria, often referred to as Biafra land, to fight in self-defense against Fulani armed bandits or terrorists that were advancing and killing people in the eastern states during the era of President Muhammadu Buhari, was that of the Director General of the Department of State Services, DSS, Adeola Ajayi, who is apparently the government chief complainer in the case, and the DSS DG in the video recorded and published by Symphony News Media in February 2025, narrated how youths at Azare community in Katagum local government area and Tafawa Balewa community of Tafawa Balewa local government area in Bauchi State, when the DSS DG was the State Director of State Security Services, SSS, resorted to self-help and killed all Boko Haram terrorists that came to attack them without depending on the security operatives, according to the DSS DG. When Boko Haram terrorists invaded Azare community, they started shooting and killing people. Then, the youths went after the Boko Haram terrorists and killed all of them, even when one of the Boko Haram terrorists named Khalid climbed a tree and started firing gunshots from the tree towards the people who were on the lower ground. The Azare people resisted and went after him and subsequently killed him, although the federal government prosecution witness identified as BBB, who is a DSS operative, stated that the ESN is an illegal organization because there is no approval of government given to the people of Southeast to establish such a self-help group to defend their land against terrorists, unlike a Motecan security network in the southwest states that was approved and permitted by the government. Also claiming, his boss, the DSS DG in the video, was asking communities to build the first line of defense by thus working with security operatives, but a careful and detailed study of the DSS DG speech in the video shows that the FG witness, BBB, probably talked off points, totally off-key from the original intent and intention of Mr. Adeola Ajayi, the DSS DG teachings and advise in the video, who had said the Azare community people acted in quick response to an emergency situation, and the storyline indicated that the people of Azare prepared themselves in advance, likely purchasing and acquiring firearms equivalent to AK-47 rifles to be able to face and kill all the Boko Haram terrorists that invaded the community, as narrated by the DSS DG. And if true, the DSS DG, the chief complainer, must also be ordered to appear before the court as a defender in the case to present a certified true copy of government approval given to Azare people to defend themselves, or prove beyond reasonable doubts how the people of Azare community were able to kill, merely with the bare hands, all the Boko Haram terrorists that invaded their community with high precision weapons of mass destructions. In addition, the DSSDG in the video probably advocated for the need for all individuals in Nigeria to have a gun, because he gave an example of a visit to the United States of America, USA, when his host in the US heard a police siren sound. He quickly brought out his gun and said, if the criminal chased after by the US police ran into his apartment, he would use the gun to kill the criminal suspect, and that not all. The DSSDG in the video also recalled and referenced the words of Nigeria former head of state, retired General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, that if insecurity must end in Nigeria, Nigerians must be ready to resort to self-help like the people of Azare community did.
The ruling simply requires Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, the defendant, to enter his defense. It's not a pronunciation of guilt or not guilty. So that is why it's called a no-case submission. So the judge made a ruling that there's a prima facie evidence that needs to be explained. So in common parlance, it calls on him to come and mount his own defense. But there is the other aspect of the ruling that concerned extraordinary rendition. That very one is one that compounded us, because the extraordinary rendition of Mazi Nnamdi Kanu is so open and notorious. Two international institutions or two separate panels of the United Nations have made pronouncements regarding his extraordinary rendition and called for his unconditional release. Nigeria is a member of the United Nations and therefore bound to consider that and implement that decision. And in Nigeria here, 3 courts have made similar pronouncements. First was by the Federal High Court of Omar, which awarded him 500 million naira. And the Court of Appeal also pronounced that he was a victim of extraordinary rendition. And in the Supreme Court, the same Supreme Court that sent this case back to trial, reached the same conclusion, that he was a victim of extraordinary rendition. And all these things are of the record. They are all in the file. And we remember when this trial was being conducted, these very documents were tendered in evidence. So it compounded us, it confused us, that the court now made a pronouncement that the extraordinary rendition had no evidence before the court, that no evidence of it was submitted before the court. And you remember, least but not the last, recently a Kenyan High Court made the same pronouncement. But well, if the court was misled by believing by mistake that these things were not in the evidence, it also said and left the door open that such evidence be submitted. So we are coming back with that evidence, and it's going to be quantum and legion.
What about the first application on the enemy?
Well, that one too, it wasn't in evidence that the Nigerian Medical Association has intervened. So it came as a surprise. Well, there's a short date given of 8 days for the NMA to submit its report. So somebody is ill, I don't think NIA is going to change much of that. But I think the judge wanted to leave the record open to admit every possible evidence regarding this matter. But meantime, we are disappointed. Our client remains ill and remains detained. And we're not happy about that. His situation requires urgent and emergent care. So whatever the court says today does not mean that the government shall withdraw back. Just 2 days ago, I wrote a letter. A private hospital has also expressed readiness to admit him here in Abuja. For security reasons, I won't mention the name of the private hospital. But the government, if the government appears to have issues with taking him to the national hospital, we have given them an option of a private hospital also here in Abuja.
So it's safe to say that the application to be transferred to the national hospital was rejected?
Rejected? No, it's pending. Yes.
One other information.
It hasn't been rejected. It's pending. It's pending the admission of this report from the Nigerian Medical Association and the opinion of the Nigerian Medical Association. And if you were in court, the judge had ordered that the committee or panel to be considered by the Nigerian Medical Association shall have a member from the National Hospital. So National Hospital is still in play.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
President of France, Emmanuel Macron, and its US counterpart, Donald Trump, on Tuesday engaged in a tough talk over the recognition of Palestine state and the Israeli war in Gaza during the bilateral meeting both held on the sideline of the UN General Assembly in New York, where the French president insisted that Israel has already achieved more by killing the top militia leaders of Hamas, saying, "It doesn't work to dismantle the Hamas. This is not the right way to proceed," he said, while President Trump had reiterated and insisted that things will not work the way the French president had suggested, that the October 7, 2023 hostages still in the custody of Hamas cannot be honored with such suggestions. The meeting was held when videos of the French president, Emmanuel Macron, and Turkish president, Recep Erdogan went viral on the internet, where both presidents were stopped or blocked separately by New York police operatives as they tried to cross streets in the New York City over yet to be seen incoming motorcade of their counterpart President Donald Trump. The French president, Emmanuel Macron, called Donald Trump on the phone after his journey to the French embassy was blocked by police officers preparing for the motorcade of the US president, but that of the Turkish president, Recep Erdogan, could be seen quickly surrounded by his security team in a manner that makes the president look apparently in shock the moment some group of New York police officers advanced towards them to stop the Turkish presidential team from crossing the road. According to New York Times, nothing frustrates a New Yorker in a hurry like finding that a street has been blocked off because some big shot is in town. Apparently, the same is true for the president of France, Emmanuel Macron. On Monday evening, Mr. Macron, in New York for the UN General Assembly, was stuck on a Manhattan street corner that had been closed off for President Trump's motorcade. The meeting of world leaders is, among other things, a traffic nightmare. At first, Mr. Macron did what many New Yorkers might do. He pleaded with a police officer to let him cross the street. "I have 10 people with me," Mr. Macron told the officer, according to video that shows the French president making his case on the street corner. "I go to the French embassy." But the officer politely held his ground and would not let Mr. Macron cross the street. "I'm sorry, President, I'm really sorry," he told Mr. Macron. "It's just that everything's been frozen right now. There's a motorcade coming right now. I'm sorry." Mr. Macron, who has engaged in diplomacy to try to end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza, tried again. "I negotiate with you," the French president said on the video. When that didn't work, Mr. Macron did what average New Yorkers cannot do. He pulled out his phone and called the President of the United States. "How are you?" he asked Mr. Trump, cell phone pressed to his ear. "Guess what? I am waiting the street because everything is frozen for you." It was not clear from the video what Mr. Trump said, but Mr. Macron chuckled and told the American president that he was hoping to have a discussion with him and Qatari officials about the situation in Gaza. The White House did not immediately respond to a request for comment on Tuesday. The French president's office confirmed that while leaving the United Nations on Monday evening, Mr. Macron was caught in a freeze when the streets were blocked to allow the American president's motorcade to pass. Mr. Macron's office confirmed that Mr. Macron used the opportunity to call Mr. Trump and said the two had a very warm and amicable discussion about international issues. Mr. Macron was eventually allowed to cross the street. Video from Brut, a French news outlet, showed him walking past food carts and posing for photos with people, including a man who planted a kiss on his forehead. The New York Police Department said in a statement that thousands of officers were on call this week to ensure the safety of New Yorkers and foreign dignitaries during the UN General Assembly. Merci to President Macron for recognizing the dedication and tireless efforts of our officers who safeguard this annual event, the department said. During the bilateral meeting, President Macron asked President Donald Trump that, since over 2 years the Israel war in Gaza began, what has been achieved. The French president said it is not right to proceed with the aim of dismantling Hamas in the Palestinian city of Gaza, emphasizing that recognizing the Palestinian state does not mean the Hamas October 7, 2023 attack would be forgotten. According to Macron, many French people were killed and injured during the attack in Israel. Adding, he visited shortly after the attack to meet with the affected families. President Donald Trump had said that October 7, 2023 is one of the world's most saddest days in history that cannot be forgotten. Saying, "It was a day babies being sliced into half, young children's heads were watched being chopped off by the Hamas, and it cannot be forgotten. Adding, he has always said the last hostages will be the toughest ones apparently to rescue, that the suggestion of the French president will not honor the hostages.
We're trying to go to the second line, so if we can cross. Yeah, great. Yeah. Cross? Yeah. Thank you. Anyone needs to cross this way. Thank you. How are you? Follow up. We are. It should go.
I was always saying the last hostages are going to be the toughest ones, but you can't honor them by doing anything like you suggest. All you can do is say, we want our hostages back, and we want the war to end. We're going to want it to end.
Nobody forgets the 7th of October. I went there a few days after, taking families in my hands, and we experienced all together these horrific attacks. And by the way, we lost a lot of French people in these terrorist attacks. But after almost 2 years of war, what is the result? Once again, they killed the top leaders of Hamas. It works. This is a great achievement. But at the same time, you have as many Hamas fighters as you had the first day. So it doesn't work to dismantle the Hamas. This is not the right way to proceed.
Bringing you the news in a more digital way.
There is no doubt that this week may be an interesting week in the international community as world leaders gather for the 2025 United Nations General Assembly meeting to discuss and take a stand over decades of conflicts between Israel and the people of Palestine, especially some of them well known as Hamas fighters, over territorial integrity and sovereignty, most especially ever since the State of Palestine was officially declared by the Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, on the 15th of November 1988, claiming sovereignty over the West Bank, which includes East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, and as at the end of 1988, over 78 countries approved the declaration, including Nigeria, that recognized Palestinian state barely 3 days after the declaration on November 18, 1988, and the numbers have been increasing, particularly since the beginning of 2024 like never before, as at September 21, 2025. Over 151 countries out of the 193 United Nations members have recognized the Palestinian state, including United Kingdom, UK, which its recognition appears to be more disturbing to the Israeli government, with the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, issuing what he described as a clear message to the world leaders recognizing Palestine as a country of its own that it's not going to happen. The United Kingdom, Australia, Canada among others declared and announced their recognition of the Palestinian state on September 21, 2025, while countries like Germany, Italy, Japan and South Korea among others are yet to make their position known. In a video broadcast on Sunday, the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, said, "Today, to revive the hope of peace for the Palestinians and Israelis, and a two-state solution, the United Kingdom formally recognizes the state of Palestine," adding that the recognition is not a reward for Hamas, reiterating that the United Kingdom has already prescribed and sanctioned Hamas as a terrorist organization, saying, any member of Hamas will not be a member of the Palestinian government, including joining the security architectures of the Palestinian state. A statement by the Prime Minister of Israel Benjamin Netanyahu issued a few hours after the video broadcast by the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer. The Israel Prime Minister said there would never be a Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. In quotes, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said, I have a clear message to those leaders who are recognizing a Palestinian state after the horrendous October 7th massacre. You are rewarding terror with an enormous prize. And I have another message for you. It's not going to happen. There will be no Palestinian state to the west of the Jordan River. For years I have prevented the creation of that terror state, against tremendous pressure, both domestic and from abroad. We have done this with determination, and with astute statesmanship. Moreover, we have doubled the Jewish settlement in Judea and Samaria, and we will continue on this path. The response to the latest attempt to force upon us a terror state in the heart of our land will be given after my return from the United States. Stand by.
In the face of the growing horror in the Middle East, we are acting to keep alive the possibility of peace and a two-state solution. That means a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. At the moment, we have neither. Ordinary people, Israeli and Palestinian, deserve to live in peace, to try to rebuild their lives free from violence and suffering. That's what the British people desperately want to see. Yet, almost 2 years after the barbaric attacks of October the 7th, hostages are still held by the terrorists of Hamas. Recent images show the hostages suffering and emaciated. Hamas even refused to release all the bodies of the dead. I have met British families of the hostages. I see the torture that they endure each and every day. Pain that strikes deep in people's hearts across Israel and here in the United Kingdom. The hostages must be released immediately, and we will keep fighting to bring them home. Let's be frank. Hamas is a brutal terror organization. Our call for a genuine two-state solution is the exact opposite of their hateful vision. So we are clear. This solution is not a reward for Hamas, because it means Hamas can have no future, no role in government, no role in security. We have already prescribed and sanctioned Hamas, and we will go further. I have directed work to sanction other Hamas figures in the coming weeks. Meanwhile, the man-made humanitarian crisis in Gaza reaches new depths. The Israeli government's relentless and increasing bombardment of Gaza, the offensive of recent weeks, the starvation and devastation are utterly intolerable. Tens of thousands have been killed, including thousands as they tried to collect food and water. This death and destruction horrifies all of us. It must end. We have evacuated the first group of sick and injured children to the United Kingdom to be treated by the NHS, and we continue to increase our humanitarian support. But still, nowhere near enough aid is getting through. We call again on the Israeli government to lift the unacceptable restrictions at the border, stop these cruel tactics, and let the aid surge in. With the actions of Hamas, the Israeli government escalating the conflict, and settlement building being accelerated in the West Bank, the hope of a two-state solution is fading. But we cannot let that light go out. That is why we are building consensus with leaders in the region and beyond around our framework for peace. This is a practical plan to bring people together behind a common vision and a series of steps, including the reform of the Palestinian Authority, that takes us from a ceasefire in Gaza to negotiations on a two-state solution. We will keep driving this forward. As part of this effort, I set out in July the terms upon which we would act in line with our manifesto to recognise Palestinian statehood. That moment has now arrived. So today, to revive the hope of peace and a two-state solution, I state clearly, as Prime Minister of this great country, that the United Kingdom formally recognises the State of Palestine. We recognised the State of Israel more than 75 years ago as a homeland for the Jewish people. Today, we join over 150 countries who recognise a Palestinian state also. A pledge to the Palestinian and Israeli people that there can be a better future. I know the strength of feeling that this conflict provokes. We have seen it on our streets, in our schools, in conversations we've had with friends and family. It has created division. Some have used it to stoke hatred and fear, but that solves nothing. Not only must we reject hate, we must redouble our efforts to combat hatred in all its forms. We must channel our efforts, united together in hope, behind the peaceful future that we want to see. The release of the hostages, an end to the violence, an end to the suffering, and a shift back towards a two-state solution as the best hope for peace and security for all sides.
Osazuwa Connected, bringing you the news in a more digital way. Osazuwa Connected, bringing you the news in a more digital way.